Being very entitled and controlling, narcissists have no difficulty stepping all over your personal boundaries. So that's why I put together an extensive video class called This Is Me. It has 25 videos, written documents, guided questions. I'm going to teach you how to have healthy boundaries. There's a link below, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. As you could very easily imagine, being a therapist and having sat in the presence of strong people that have a real strong narcissistic bent, you can guess that I have been exposed to quite a bit of emotional expression that can quickly go off the rails. I mean, people can be in my office and they can have a lot of anger or strain or tension that's a part of what they bring to me on that particular day. There can be an argumentative tone that other individuals have. These individuals can have an impassioned plea that they bring toward me or someone else that might be in the office. There's an intensity that can be there. And one of the things that we can say is people can have strong emotion, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it represents true strength from the inside out. Now, obviously, it's not entirely wrong to have strong emotion, but along with that strong emotion, you also want to have a sense that says, I know where I'm going with this, and I'm going to manage it in such a way where it's not going to be destructive. Narcissists don't have that kind of filter. Whenever they have strong emotion, they can go way out of balance really quickly, and they begin illustrating how there's a lack of that inner sense of resolve to draw upon, and as a result, they illustrate that they, in fact, are emotional weaklings. Despite the fact that the emotion may be strong, there's a weakling element, and basically what I mean by that is they illustrate through the way that they manage emotions that they don't have the skill set to have a sense of balance. Basically, when narcissists go into their real strong emotional reaction to you, what they imply, they won't necessarily say this out loud, but what they imply is, I don't know how to cope. I don't know how to cope with stress. I don't know how to cope with diversity of thought. I don't know how to cope with the possibility of rejection. I sure don't know how to cope with ambiguity and vagueness. I don't know how to cope with not having things my way. I don't know how to cope with disappointments. I don't know how to cope when I'm being challenged. I don't have the proper skill set to do so. Now, I want you to think, would you ever hear a narcissist say something like that? And typically the answer, of course, is no. These individuals want to give the impression that they know everything and you can't help them. But as you engage with them, you realize there's not a lot of wisdom being accessed here. There's not a lot of helpfulness or insight that goes along, and typically they don't take responsibility. All of that implies that they're coming from a very weak place. Now, I have multiple ways that are signs that we can watch for that shows you that you're dealing with somebody who's coming from a position of the emotional weakling. And it's so important for us to understand this and recognize this, because if you don't see it, what happens is they'll pull you into their orbit, so to speak, and you wind up being every bit as dysregulated as they are. And then they can turn around and say, see, look at you. And we don't want that to happen. So let's look at some of the ways that narcissists will imply, I'm not strong, I'm feeling very weak, though they may try to portray the exact opposite. For example, number one, I'm going to give you 8 different illustrations. Number one, in terms of signs that a person is operating as an emotional weakness or weakling, is their emotion consistently overrides logic. When you think of that narcissistic person who's in the middle of an emotional meltdown, you don't think of them as being logical and reasonable or accessing wisdom. It's like once that emotional train has left the station, there's no stopping it. The emotion overrides the logic that's there, and that happens consistently with narcissistic people. A second indicator that they're actually coming from a position of the emotional weakling is that they commonly mistake power for strength. Okay. Now, by that, I mean they can be very authoritarian in the way that they manage themselves in the midst of emotional meltdowns. They can have strong imperatives. You better, you must, you have to. They can be fiercely stubborn. And so it's like the more overpowering they are, it's like, now do you understand who's the bright one around here? And it's like, well, all I know is you're in super compensation mode. The more overpowering you try to be, the more it is that you have is an indicator that you've had your weaknesses exposed and you're trying your best to cover that up. That's an illustration of an emotional weakling when you come across in this overpowering kind of way. Another indicator that they're coming from a weakling's position is that they want to teach you in such a way that they are punishing. So in other words, if there's something that's bothered them, it's like, I'm going to teach you something. I'll just make you squirm. I'm going to make you miserable that you ever came against me, and you'll think twice about ever coming against me ever again. I'm going to make you regret it. And so they think that shows that they're on top of it. It's like, no, all that tells me is, again, you're operating with a fear-based mentality, and it's coming across in this projection of strength that really is not strength at all. A fourth indicator that they're an emotional weakling is they will constantly, guaranteed, play the victim card. Look at how miserable you're making me feel. When in fact, well, a lot of the emotion that narcissist is feeling is already primed and ready to go on the inside of them, and one false move on your part, and there it comes. But no, it's your fault. They're the victim. You have pushed something awful onto them. I'm thinking, no, it's pre-existing. Okay? Now, right along with that, a fifth indicator of their weakness is that they'll go straight into blame shifting. Now, even if they have a history of erring or having mistakes, whenever that problem comes along and they are inappropriate emotionally, they start looking around thinking, who can I blame here? Oh, there you are. You'll do. And so none of this would have happened if it weren't for you. And they go into the blame and the accusation kind of mode. Excuse me. In addition, a sixth indicator of their emotional weakness is that they don't have honest self-assessment. If you were to try to stop them and say, let's pull back and let's think this thing through, I'll talk about where I fit into this equation. I want you to talk about where you fit into this equation. It's like, well, we'll talk about what your problems, but they can't access their own insights because they hardly have any insight. They have a very low understanding of their own anger and their own insecurities that are being triggered in the moment. It's all outwardly focused because they have not developed introspection and intuitive skills at all. Then a seventh indicator of their emotional weakness is that they go into the sulking mode and brooding and moodiness. It's their way of letting you know, hey, I'm not done trying to punish you and make you feel awkward and uncomfortable. So they'll sulk and kind of look, is that working now? And they'll gripe and complain or just make themselves just in a very unapproachable kind of way. It's like, did that impact you? And so they're kind of hoping that maybe if they do that, that'll make you somehow feel sorry for them and you'll change your ways. And then an eighth indicator that these individuals are operating as an emotional weakling is that they have difficulty truly accessing tender or affirming emotions. It's much easier for a narcissist to access anger and irritability and annoyance and contempt than it is for them to have tenderness. And if they have tenderness, you hate to just sound like a cynic, but it's like, okay, what do you want? And so the tenderness is actually more of a manipulative ploy. Narcissists are not loving individuals, and they don't filter their responses through that filter system that says, I want to maintain my reputation of being truly loving. Whenever you engage with narcissists and they bring these various indicators of their own emotional weakness, we can say one thing with certainty, and that is, it's not going to end well. Narcissists lack the wisdom, they lack the insight to say, why don't we just examine the full scope of what we have going on in front of us, like an adult would. Instead, you're dealing with an adult with child's reactions. And so all they're thinking is, well, I feel what I feel right now, and that's the only thing that matters. Narcissists are very inclined towards binary thinking, all or nothing. And you know and I know that whenever we have relationships, it's just not quite that all or nothing. There's a whole lot in between that we need to access, nuances and unique circumstances, a backstory. And the narcissist is thinking, no, I have my agenda, and we're just going to go to my agenda, and all that other stuff is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. So, knowing this and realizing that you're dealing with an emotionally weak person, I'm hoping on your side of the equation, it's like, there is no way I'm going to take my cues from an emotionally weak and immature person. By the way, in these kind of scenarios, too many times the more negative person wins, in the sense that they're the ones that set the pace. And it's like, no, I'm not going to let that happen. When you're faced with an emotional weakling who's going to collapse and is going to get real dysregulated, always keep in mind that you do have options. You don't. One option is you can join them if you want. You can be every bit as aggressive as they are, or you can suppress the real you, or you can go head to head with them. You can play passive aggressive games with them. You can seethe with bitterness. But I'm hoping you can realize, well, there are times when assertiveness works. That meaning I am going to stand up for myself, establish boundaries and consequences. But in assertiveness, it also means, but I'm going to keep my dignity about myself. You can move on forward away from them if you need to, so that you don't have to deal with all the drama that they bring unnecessarily, knowing that they can't match pitch with you. But let's understand that someone in the equation needs to be emotionally mature as opposed to being the emotional weakling. Let's go ahead and nominate you as the chairman of that committee of being emotionally mature. Like I say, you're dealing with an adult who's operating with childish emotional reactions. They can't monitor themselves well at all. And so I'm hoping that as you see this and sometimes experience it, you can draw the conclusion toward the narcissist. Your emotional weakness reminds me of the importance for me to be emotionally balanced. That's what I stand for. I hope that this gives you just some more things to think about so that you can see behind the scenes of what you're dealing with. If you've not already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. Gus and I are going to bring more videos toward you so that you can have that much more of an insight and awareness of what you're dealing with. And I thank you for letting me be on your journey with you. And when I say that, I really mean it. Thank you for letting me be on your journey with you. If you have a need for therapy, and many times when you're dealing with these kind of things, that would be completely appropriate. I'm sponsored by a whole host of licensed professional therapists. They're with the BetterHelp.com people. There's a link below that will take you to their website, and I'm so pleased that we have them to access. And so if you have a need, online therapy is very popular right now. It's affordable, it's accessible, so I would encourage you to look into that if the need is there. Likewise, I have my courses, and these are like signing up for online classes. There are multiple, like 25 videos per course with written materials and guided questions, and you can go through them at your own pace, but they're meant to be a very therapeutic thing, and you can sit down and talk it through with people that you want to have some help with, if that's a possibility. We have Ready, Set, Connect about connecting well. This is me establishing those boundaries. Free to be about finding yourself despite the controllers. We also have my webinars. We have our podcast. We have our website with many articles. We have my books, lots of resources for you, and I hope that you can avail yourself to all of that. Okay, you're dealing with emotionally immature individuals, which says somebody needs to be mature. And like I say, I hope that can be you. And as you realize, I guess I could be like those individuals, but I know better. And I know my better path that I'm going down. I'm hoping it positions you to be a person of steadiness, and then it ultimately can lead you into your place of peace.